volume of the Cinema Chronicles right here on Nashville Movie Dispatch is here and ready to go. This is a fine, sunny Sunday morning here. I just got back from vacation and went to the beach, went down to Florida, got to tour Alligator Alcatraz right there on the beach. It's really nice. And we were actually set up right in between Pensacola and Orange Beach. And we were, it was supposed to be a very relaxing vacation, but, and listen, we still had fun, don't get me wrong. We went with a big group of family, but what happened over those 7 days was so exhausting. I'm actually happy just to be back home. I think usually on vacation, once it kind of winds down, I'm ready to go home. I'm not really ready to go back to work necessarily. Just, you know, I got to see my animals. I got to lay in my bed, that kind of stuff. But this one started with, as soon as we got to the condo, my wife's car started acting up. The windshield wipers started moving when the car was off. So I've heard that's not good. I don't know much about cars, but I've heard that's not good. And then later on, we took it just for about 10 minutes down the road to go to the grocery store. And I think every light that could light up on the dashboard did. Assisting the power steering went out. So we got it back, and my cousin's husband, he knows a little bit about cars. We were messing with it. We messed with the battery. We got to get that checked, and we looked at the fuse box, did all these things. But in the meantime, my emergency power brake went on and would not come off. So then I'm stuck. So long story short, I had to get my car towed on a Monday to the dealership, and we finally got it back on Thursday after a couple of fun calls. And if you're thinking, man, wow. Well, that was only the beginning, because my cousin and her husband, they have a little girl, and she ended up getting an ear infection after running a fever. And so because of the medicine, she really wasn't able to go to the beach or the pool for the last, 3 days of vacation. My son ended up getting swimmer's ear, and that didn't really stop him from the ocean and pool, but we did have to take some precautions and some antibiotics. And then back home, we had 2 family members that ended up in the hospital. So to say that I don't think I've ever had a situation where I've come back from vacation and I genuinely thought, we made it. we did it. We made it through. So anyway, Perdido Key's where we stayed, and I don't know if they'll appreciate this or not, but that place is cursed, and I'm never going back. But besides that, let's see, with my wife's birthday earlier this month. She is not a birthday person, unlike me. I love it, and mine's next month, so I can't wait. But we celebrated that, and we got back yesterday afternoon, and here we are this morning. But I don't know if anyone else has ever had quite a vacation like that, but if you have, I feel your pain. It's felt like when was this break coming? But when I look at it now that it's all said and done, I mean, listen, there could be worse places to be broke down at than at a condo that's on the beach. So, I mean, I get it. But anybody knows, especially with a car, I don't know much about cars, and I'm not in Nashville, so it was stressful. It was just stressful. But I will tell you this. My son had a blast with everybody. He does not even know. He will never know the stress of that vacation, because he was drunk on pool, sand, the ocean, Mickey Mouse, and putt-putt, and ice cream. So he had a great time, and that's what it was. I can hang my hat on that at least. So, well, let's get into it. Enough about my fun vacations. I'll let you know where we go next year. I'm not taking a car. I know that. So, coming up first, Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson is being such a silly goose. I'll tell you about it next. The Naked Gun. Who knew that we needed a legacy sequel to The Naked Gun that first started back in, I think, mid 80s with the one and only Leslie Nielsen. But Leslie Nielsen, eat your heart out. He's dead, by the way, in case anyone's wondering. But Liam Neeson is our new Naked Gun. And via IndieWire, this was an IndieWire interview title for The Naked Gun. Writers, a guiding goal. What's the stupidest thing we can get Liam Neeson to say? Says longtime screenwriting partners Dan Greger and Doug Mann both grew up spoof freaks. So yes, as they tell IndieWire, there's a lot riding on the reboot, but they've got the jokes and gags, Pamela Anderson scatting, giant coffees, and TiVo noises to back it up. The film starring Liam Neeson is both a reimagining and a continuation of the classic Naked Gun films of the 80s and 90s. In it, Neeson is Frank Drebin Jr., the grizzled cop son of original star Frank Drebin, the incomparable late Leslie Nielsen, as we talked about, who also happens to be seemingly genetically predisposed to wacky happenstance in his day-to-day life. When Frank takes on a big case, which inevitably brings him into the orbit of the alluring Beth Davenport, played by Pamela Anderson, he has to use all his brain power, parentheses silly jokes, and muscle, a love of chili dogs, to save the day, get the girl, and make everyone laugh while doing it. Within that IndieWire interview, they asked, people have wanted this kind of joy for a while. A Naked Gun reboot has been kicking around in Hollywood for years, and there have been many iterations of star writers and director attached. Did you guys take anything from the other scripts, or is this just you and Akiva? And we're talking about Akiva Schaffer, who is a part of the Lonely Island gang there. Greger says, this is just us. Something that felt very important was that the only reason this movie exists in our minds is because Liam Neeson agreed to do this. We were dead set that we needed to really honor that original Airplane template of only casting dramatic actors and looking at it really, really through the lens of drama. But we're comedians and we're friends with comedians, and it was very painful to tell all of our comedian friends, fuck off. And Mann says, we didn't have to use fuck off, but we did. Greger said, but I insisted. I said, hey, come to my house. I want to tell you something. With Liam, there's really nobody else in Hollywood who has both that gravitas and has not sort of smirked his way out of it with a Marvel movie. Mann says, or something lighter or something like that, which is totally fine. He spent the last 15 years making these vigilante movies, making Taken and movies like that, where he is the lone man who is the only one who can get the daughter back, or the only one who can, and then Greger intervenes and says, punch a wolf. I'm thinking he's thinking of The Grey, which, let me tell you, that is one of the best and underrated Liam Neeson movies of all time. Mann goes on and says, so the whole approach for it, for us three, when we sat down, was like, we have Liam Neeson. And Liam Neeson has this body of work, so we have to go back into this body of work. And also movies that haven't even been spoofed, that he isn't in. All the John Wicks, the Mission Impossibles that haven't been touched, which is also a gift for us. And Liam is not Leslie, and no one is Leslie. Leslie, he's a unicorn, and Liam is not trying to be that. So let's lean into the fact that we have Liam Neeson here as a generational talent, one of the greatest of all time, and he's doing these silly lines. That was the whole point. So it was less about the other scripts or projects before. It was more just like, Liam's here, what can we do with him? Greger says the basic task was, what's the stupidest thing we can get Liam Neeson to say? Mann says, and we think we got him to say some really stupid stuff. And then Greger ends this portion of the interview by saying, talking about Neeson, he's such a good actor. So he'd show up, and really the first take would be perfect, almost without fail. It leaves us all this space to give him alternatives and to play with it. Then he had this thing that he would say. After the script would make him do something particularly embarrassing or awful. When they'd yell cut, he would go like, I'm Oscar Schindler, damn it. What's happened to me? I think he had a really good time. You'll have a really good time watching this Naked Gun. Neeson is pitch perfect in this stellar spoof movie that is short, absolutely ridiculous, hilarious, and honors Nielsen's originals with such joy and admiration. I think you can kind of tell that from the interview with the writers. Pamela Anderson is fantastic. She shows off some great comedic chops. That scatting really is pretty terrific. Paul Walter Hauser's in this as well. He has a few good bits, and Danny Houston as the diabolical villain gets to be really playful and is involved in a very funny Black Eyed Peas scene, and his fight with Frank Jr. At the end will have you, I think, laughing out loud, and I won't ruin it, but that fight fits this movie so well that it was hilarious. Again, this is directed by Akiva Schaffer. He's a member of the Lonely Island. Their humor as a whole is very much a part of every movie that he does, and has no problem playing in this sandbox that's overflowing with goofiness. But we're almost always rewarded for it. Anybody who's seen the Pop Star movie, and I even dare say the Chip and Dale movie that ended up just going straight to streaming on Disney Plus. This is going back. Now, this is a separate IndieWire because I love it. It says, inside the Naked Gun scene that Schaefer had to fight to keep. And this is not the one I thought he would have to fight to keep, but it sort of makes sense. So bear with me here. The 1988 original Love montage is truly a classic. The cheery Herman's Hermit 1964 hit is a smart fit watching Leslie Nielsen and Priscilla Presley laugh their way through a first date to see Platoon is still funny, and who can forget that body condom? The original had done all of that so well, but so had others. Says, we knew it had to be different than that, said Schaefer. And then there's been 30 years of making fun montages, whether it's Team America or whatever. There's not a lot of room left in the montage. We were debating not doing a montage and had a few other ideas. Schaefer said he was aware of Jack Frost, but had only seen the trailer of the 1998 Killer Snowman movie. This certainly plays a part in this scene, but there's also a Jack Frost that's actually a quite family-friendly movie with Michael Keaton in it, just for everyone's FYI. It wasn't a subgenre, if you even call that. He had been consciously considering spoofing, but one night when he got up at 4 a.m. to use the bathroom, the snowman scene started to play out in his head. When I got back in bed, it had been percolating that day in the writer's room, and I just saw the entire thing and wrote it into bullet point notes, and then texted it to Dan and Doug, the writers. The next morning, I came into the writer's room, and they were like, yeah, done. It honestly only changed teeny bits for production reasons. A cabin instead of a house, but it never really changed. That's not to say everyone involved with the Naked Gun reboot initially understood the brilliance of the scene. It was polarizing in script reads. People I really respect, like Andy Samberg, when he read it for me, he was like, Snowman's the best. Do not let them cut it. Knowing it would be cuttable. It makes sense once you see the movie, but at one point, I did have to threaten to quit. The fact that Akiva, and when you see this scene, it is beyond absurd, but it is hilarious. And honestly, the montage is as nuts as it sounds, and it is funny as hell. But at first, I actually thought it was a dream sequence, and then when it went to the next scene, and I realized it wasn't, I think I laughed even harder that was supposed to be a real situation that they just went through. But there truly is a joke or a gag like every other second, and there aren't too many that miss. After seeing, I think all of us, just how successful Neeson is and his deadpan portrayal, I feel like he's about to become a comedy megastar if done right. Anybody who has seen The Naked Gun, I don't know if people kind of realized the comedy element that Neeson could bring. And I think the only other comedy he's really ever been in, I think, was How to Die Him in a Million Ways in the West or something that Seth MacFarlane directed. I know it had Charlize Theron in it as well, and Seth MacFarlane starred in it. But the fact that Neeson has become an action star before this really benefits the movie. He's essentially spoofing himself in many ways, and it's a freaking hoot. An Oscar-nominated dramatic actor to an action icon in his mid-50s to now quite possibly a comedy superstar in his 70s. He has a very particular set of skills he's acquired over a very long career, creating a world where there's no genre he can't kick ass in. And the fact that Mr. Neeson found love again on The Naked Gun with the one and only Pamela Anderson, I believe is probably one of the greatest happily ever afters in cinematic history. I bet the sex is off the charts. I was going to say magically delicious since Neeson is Irish, but I didn't want to get in trouble. The Naked Gun gets a solid 3.5 out of 5. And coming up next, the director of Barbarian is coming for them kids. Next. I'm, of course, talking about Weapons. I think what a lot of people would consider maybe one of the best horror films of the year. But before I get into that, I have to share the story about how bad Jordan Peele wanted this film for his Monkey Paw Productions and how heads had to roll when he lost out on it. This is via a Vibe.com. Says Jordan Peele parted ways with his management team after losing Weapons bidding war. Zach Cregger's Weapons is set to be the next biggest film as far as horror is concerned. There was a bidding war, as they say, but it says, according to Deadline, the film sold to New Line for $38 million, including the budget, and Cregger's $10 million total payment for his directing fee, scripting, and producing, alongside some other folks. It says Universal, in partnership with Jordan Peele Monkey Paw Productions, was outbid by $7 million. Peele was so eager to secure the film that he was reportedly ready to kick in part of his contractual back end. This, however, caused some strife. One version of events claims that Peele was pissed because he was allegedly told that if he matched New Line's bid, he'd win. But the Us visionary and Universal weren't confident about the budget as a business proposition. This was the reasoning behind them backing out. Amid the auction and negotiating, Peele parted ways with his longtime Artist First management team, Joel Zadak and Peter Precipito, who happens to, the latter is also Cregger's manager. I'm going to go ahead and say, I think Peele knew then what we all know now, is that Weapons is unlike anything we've seen before at the movies. This is per Rotten Tomatoes. When all but one child from the same class mysteriously vanish on the same night at exactly the same time, a community is left questioning who or what is behind their disappearance. Zach Cregger's, that's right, that Zach Cregger's, the co-director of Miss March, if anyone has seen that thing, is the new master of horror. It's looking like it. His first solo feature, Barbarian, was frightening, funny, and fun. Through ways that were unconventional, clever, and wild, he fed on our fears of a nightmarish Airbnb experience, pitch black, creepy basements. On top of that, it positioned itself as a surprisingly social thriller of men's barbaric treatment of women. It had this unyielding sense of dread that keeps us entertained and on edge the deeper we stepped into the darkness. And so much of what I think made Barbarian what it was and what we experienced feeds into Weapons, except it's all turned up a few notches. Cregger's has been fine-tuning his skills as a writer and filmmaker, and it shows in astounding ways. His divine direction, his outstanding storytelling, and stunning imagery that can be found in his latest psychological horror. And also, I'll have you know, It also doesn't hurt to have the one and only David Fincher help you out with some creative ideas. And you can go look that up. Craigers talks about having access to Fincher and being able to find these ways of getting what you want and taking kind of advantage of these resources that Craigers has never really, that didn't really know about. So, Weapons, it's chilling and clever, frightening and darkly funny. And for Craigers, it was pretty personal. This is a via slash, excuse me, a via slash film. There's an exclusive interview with Zach Craigers, and this was by Chris Evangelista. He said, I had read that the book The Gift of Fear partially inspired Barbarian. I'm wondering if something was similar here. Again, I know you don't want to go into spoilers, but if there was anything that inspired this specific story or the stories really, because there are many. Krager says, yeah, it was a personal tragedy that happened in my life, so it wasn't like a piece of media or anything like that, but it was just something that happened to me. It's much more. If Barbarian was an outward-facing movie, a movie that had a lot to say about society, he says that sounds so pretentious, but it was a movie that was looking out and talking about the world, whereas Weapons is a movie that's very much like me, looking inwards and inventorying my shit, my life. It's an autobiographical movie in a lot of ways. Excuse me. This tragedy does revolve around the death of his close personal friend and collaborator, Trevor Moore. He was the co-founder, also Crager was a part of, called The Whitest Kid You Know. Moore accidentally fell from his upstairs balcony and died on August 7th. And it says, supposedly, that Weapons was released on August 7th. There is speculation. I don't know. I couldn't find any confirmation of it, but there is belief that the cops were called at 2:30 a.m., leaving some to think that the time in the movie of 2:17 when the kids go missing may have been when he actually fell. So obviously it's very much, and actually Trevor Moore, I think, was the other director in Miss Marge and starred in it with him. So yeah, that I would have never have thought that on something about this, but I know where it's just like he kind of just kept writing, and it all kind of came from his buddy and his accidental death. So the storytelling aspect of Weapons, I really dug. It kind of actually caught me off guard. I didn't realize that was kind of structured, but it's kind of that Magnolia Pulp Fiction with different perspectives being shown from the different characters that kind of all lead to their paths colliding. This is a review by Brian Tellerco from RogerEbert.com. Says, a film driven by competing narratives and hidden secrets. It's a movie about what's in your neighbor's basement or something deadly in a criminal's pocket, something waiting to jump out and hurt you. And so the structural aspect of it serves as the foundation for thematic undercurrents rather than just a showy choice. It amplifies how a divided response to tragedy can only lead to greater trauma. On top of the structure, the script, it is deranged and funny in equal measure. The editing is divine. It's the fractured narrative. It allows us to see each character's journey, their faults and struggles, then eventually leads to the choices that they make that just might seal their fate. A killer score, and George Harrison's Beware of Darkness is perhaps the perfect song to open the film on. Read some of those lyrics to that song, and you'll understand why after you see the movie. Crager's in the atmosphere is fantastic. It's unsettling. It's eerie. There always seems to be this constant. You're always in this constant state of dread. The scares, I will say, there's not too many, but the ones we do get are pretty effective. And at times, the movie ends up getting it's almost too fast. It kind of hits you, but it is very brutal at times. Julia Gardner, Josh Brolin, they are great. I think they're one of the two obviously main standouts. Julia Gardner is the teacher who is sort of kind of the scapegoat for the community, thinking there must be something she's done. What does she do? What does she know? And she's not only carrying that, but she is a teacher that cares. And so the fact that her whole class just disappears is not only frightening, but she has this relationship with these kids. And so she wants to know what happened to them just as much as the parents do. And Josh Brolin is one of those parents, and he's coming at it from something's happened, and he kind of starts his own little investigation. And it's kind of becomes where he's not really concerned about how he may affect others while he's trying to get the answers that he wants. Carrie Christopher, Benedict Wong, Alden Eichenreich, they're great. Alden, I thought, did a nice job. And again, all of these characters have something going on. And it almost kind of brings out, a tragedy like this almost brings out the worst in these characters. Austin Abrams, if you've seen him in other stuff, but he is great. He was recently in the Wolves movie with George Clooney and Brad Pitt as the kid running around in his underwear. He's a scene stealer. He plays basically an addict, but it comes out of left field, but his character ends up being such a pivotal part of all of it, and sort of how we're all kind of led to this one spot where everything is happening. But I really liked him in it. And then there's Amy Madigan. She plays Aunt Gladys. The film itself morphs into something way more sinister when she shows up on screen. She's instantly spellbinding. We get to the and everything sort of leads up to this third act, and then there's this reveal. I am not going to go into details about it. I don't want to ruin it for anybody that hasn't seen it, but I personally think that it doesn't fully deliver. And I think a lot of that is because it comes after such a tense and gripping buildup. And I honestly, when it happened, my first question was, did this abruptly become just a twisted and gruesome hocus pocus? However, stick with me here. When it all comes to a head, what we get is still tremendous. It's an ending that could certainly lose some people, but I found it to be a wonderfully wild way to go out. I don't think Craigers would have wanted it any other way. Weapons, as a whole, I think it's unlike any horror film you've seen. And as intriguing as the mystery is, it's really less about that and more about what the disappearances unleash in the people who live in this community. It's their anger, their grief, their trauma, their selfishness, the paranoia, the guilt, the fear, and the hatred. It's all weaponized. It's just to what degree. And no one here in Weapons escapes unscathed. But the reasons are all completely different, ultimately coming back around to the kids bearing the brunt of it all. The final shot, along with the child narrator that opens the film as well, that Weapons ends on, is a haunting reminder of that. It's fucking frightening how weapons can take many forms while still causing the exact same irrefutable and irreparable damage. I'm giving Weapons a 4 out of 5 stars. And coming up next, Better Call Saul just wants to make family memories, and there's a batshit crazy Sharon Stone who can help. Nobody 2. The original, for those who have seen it, I thought was a fun and fanciful revenge action flick. was fast-paced and darkly comedic. It had a nice, family element mixed in. And it truly doesn't get any better than old Bob Odenkirk's bang-up performance of an unforeseen badass who takes a licking and keeps on ticking. Per Rotten Tomatoes, Nobody 2, workaholic assassin Hutch Mansell takes his family on a much-needed vacation to the small tourist town of Plummerville. However, he soon finds himself in the crosshairs of a corrupt theme park operator, a shady sheriff, and a bloodthirsty crime boss. Listen, I'm sorry, folks, but this one here I think is a lackluster sequel that tosses the tone of the first one like right out of the window in like the first 30 minutes or so. It's certainly more cartoonish, yet the no-holds-barred violence still delivers. This is via discussing film. Bob Odenkirk says, "For me, what mattered in the second movie was what's something that a couple could relate to as a tension in their life. One of the big ones in America, I don't know if it's around the world, is the inability to take a fucking break and not work constantly or worry about our jobs. I think it's a relatable thing. People are very driven in our country. It's a great thing, but you also have to give yourself a fucking break, and Hutch just can't do it. Most people can't do it. I've struggled to do it myself." That is a great idea, and he's spot on with that. However, in Nobody 2, when they're even on vacation, Hutch is hardly with his family, and they all seem like they're pretty much okay with it. So I don't know how we, for this, and what mattered the most, according to Odenkirk, is not really shared. I'm not saying it's not discussed, and it's thrown around, but when it actually comes time about taking this break, and that's all he wants to do, he just wants to make memories, but all of this crazy shit is happening, and his wife, Connie Nielsen, and his kids, like, everybody's just like, I guess his dad going to join us? Like, it's almost just like, okay. Also, the movie does touch on some interesting, or at least somewhat interesting, husband-father issues that deals with Hutch's marriage, his son taking after his old man. But then it's like we almost instantly forget about them too. And I get it. We're here to see bones break and blood splatter, but it sucks that there are things in here that I think they had the best of intentions, but it doesn't play out that well. Now, I will say, the slick back Sharon Stone, she's unhinged, and I mean, she's doing like crazy campy stuff here. I'm pretty sure the director just pointed the camera at her and turned it on and just let her do whatever the hell she felt like doing. And sometimes it works, because Nobody 2 itself embraces the foolishness quite a bit. As far as Odenkirk, look, you can't help but ride or die with him, and also the beloved Christopher Lloyd for that matter. But Odenkirk is fantastic and is undoubtedly what pushes this movie across the finish line. You're almost always sort of locked into how Hutch rolls. It seems like trouble can't help but find him, and he hits it head on. He's fun to watch, even if director... oh boy, I should have practiced this. Timo Tjahjanto? He's the director of The Night Comes For Us, if you haven't seen it, but it just doesn't feel like he can raise Nobody 2 to Odenkirk's level. It's clearly Odenkirk, and then everything's kind of beneath that. And part of it is because he is so good. He's also so believable as this kind of action star. Sort of like the way I think Liam Neeson kind of came onto the scene with Taken. But there are some lame moments provided in the name of this overall goofiness of everything. So of course, also how fitting is it to have its final shootout at a theme park? But at least Nobody 2 still has a pretty good sense of humor about itself, which, I mean, sort of has you accepting the absurdity. You sort of know that you're going to get in. You kind of know what you're getting into. What I I think the main issue that I take issue with is that it's almost like we needed a Nobody 2, and we even kind of start out the sequel like Nobody, but then we just toss that for some dumb amusement park vacation thing where so much stuff just feels like it's over the top. It's not as funny. It's more familiar. It's more predictable. I think fans of the first one won't. I don't think you'll be disappointed, but I do think you should be far less impressed as well. I'm giving Nobody 2 2.5 out of 5 stars for the VixFlix rating, and that will wrap up another volume of these Cinema Chronicles on Nashville Movie Dispatch. This is your host, Brandon Vick. Again, member of the board member of the Music City Film Critics Association, member of the Southeastern Film Critics Association. Remember, all of our work can be found on NashvilleMovieDispatch.substack.com. I'll be back next month as 1 year older and with another volume of these Cinema Chronicles. And until then, just go see a damn movie. Oh.